It says, oh no, I've been triggered, but because it was a draw, none of us were voted out. And I'll be teleported in, and Mobile Scrap was voted out because nobody else was in this area. What's up everyone? Welcome back to another Fortnite Creative 1.0/2.0 tutorial. Recently I've been getting a lot of comments, a lot of questions asking me, will you ever make a tutorial on a voting system with event binding? What event binding is basically the new system that they added. If we grab a trigger here, we can see the new functions and events here. So when we add, we can see the trigger here, which is what it's called, and we can select a function to trigger it. So if we stood in this, the trigger would trigger the trigger, and that would trigger the trigger, and you know, it's a whole rabbit hole right there. Before, I've done this tutorial about 3 times, but that was with channels, making it incredibly complicated to actually do it now. So, today, I'm going to show you how to make a voting system with the new event binding. And it's going to be very, very simple, because man, this is a lot easier than channels. But before we get into it, let me ask you this. Have you ever played Storage Wars? How about in Fortnite? Why not go ahead and check out my brand new game, Storage Battles. Codes on the screen, play it with your friends, enemies, up to 4 players, bunch of fun. Let's get back into the game. Alright, so these are the devices that you're going to need for this tutorial. The good old OG trigger, the player reference device, the player spawner, the pulse sequencer, the mutator zone, a good old score manager, and a timer, which I don't have in my inventory. We'll quickly grab one of those. There we go. These are the devices that you're going to use. So I'm going to just quickly delete all of these so they don't mess up with the stuff that I've already placed down, because I've already made a wee system here. It's not fully complete, so we can go through this step by step. Now let's start off with the player spawner. And by the way, this tutorial is going to be made for 4 players max. However, it is super simple to increase that amount, but you can only go up to a maximum of 16 players simply because we use the class selector here. And yes, you're going to need a class selector too. Now with the player spawner, all you're going to do is go to your events, and on player spawned, class selector, change player to class, player reference, register player, and player reference again, activate it. That's just an extra wee precaution. The player reference is over here in the voting room. This is going to show what player you're going to be voting out. As for the class selector, there's not much changed here, except class to switch to is set to class 1. Now, over here in these circles, these are the voting boards that I have done. Now you can change them to squares, triangles, whatever you want. But in my tutorial, I'm going to be using cylinders. I've placed a mutator zone here and a score manager up top. Now this is called mutator zone device 2. So in score manager, I'm going to go ahead to functions, and I'm going to go ahead and increment when receiving from the mutator zone device 2 on player entering zone. Now we're also going to actually need ourselves a nice little rift, or teleporter should it be called. Yes sirree. With this, once a person votes, they can't vote again. That's just the whole point of it. And we'll grab ourselves a barrier here to lock the players in a little square. So you can change whatever style you want. I'm going to go ahead though for the blue force field and change this to a hollow box. So it's going to look like this, and then we'll be able to stand in it and see what's going on beneath us. Now with the teleporter, put it just in the middle there. Set these to both be group none. And you can again fiddle around with all these. I'm going to turn all of these off though. Face teleporter in position, yes. Yeah. No, and that's all okay. So with this little line going across here, that means players will face this way once teleported. In here, teleport when receiving from, we're going to go in here, mutator zone device 2. on player entering zone. So as soon as a person touches this, they're going to get teleported up here, and it's going to add 1 score. Now go ahead and grab your trigger, because this is where the voting part comes in. This is all visual, okay? What we've done here is all visual so far, besides this mutator zone. In the trigger, we're going to trigger when receiving from mutator zone device 2 on player entering zone. Activating team can be any, and all of this here, good stuff. Times can trigger infinite, trigger delay 0, VFX and all, you can turn those off if you want. But here at the very bottom we have transmit every X triggers. Set that to 16. And what we're going to do with this is that we're going to go ahead and put it in this zone here. I'm going to shrink it down a wee bit just so it fits. Now this is the pulse trigger. You're going to place it down, and these are the settings that you're going to change it to. Now this tempo here, I'm actually going to set this up to 180 so it goes a bit faster. The length I have is 1. Number of loops is 8, because then it bounces back and forward 8 times, which adds up to the full 16. So it'll just go bop, 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 and it'll do this 8 times, slash 16 times, whatever way you want to look at it. And that means it will trigger this 16 times. In here, once it's triggered, we're going to make it stop the pulse. So we got the pulse trigger, stop sequence. So once this one, if like there's one person in this, 0 in the rest, it will stop on this specific trigger, not making it vote out anyone else besides that one person. So currently this means that there is no draw system in this game, and it'll always vote one person out. Now, who's that one person? Well, it's whoever this trigger belongs to. If nobody votes, it's the first person. If one person votes, or if 2 people are voting and it's 1 on 2 of these, it'll still be the first person because he's the first at the start. Okay, there's been a small wee change. Luckily, I did catch on to this before I went too far. Now, once this is triggered, this is going to be the spot where the person gets teleported and they fall to their voted doom. So we got a new teleporter here, and make sure that you've got it set to class 1. Now the next step is a player counter. And we're going to place one of these right here and grab a zone. So at the very bottom in zone, and now it is set to 1. I don't know why it always places in such a weird angle, but there you go. Now it's got this zone in it. Okie dokie. Let's set it to equal or fewer than 1. Actually, we'll do equal. Equal to 1. So if it goes to 2 or more, then it'll cancel the whole system. But if it stays at 1, then it'll be like, okay, that's the vote over. Let's kick this person out of this lobby. So transmit on player count it / remove signal only. Make sure you have it on signal and for all. Compare and count change? No. Count it team any, and that's all okay there. Now we're going to have to get into this sort of copy and pasting part, but before we do that, let's talk about the timer. The timer here is how long players have to vote. This, of course, is a tutorial, so it's not going to be very long. I would recommend 30 to 60 seconds. 60 is a wee bit too much, 30 is just the right spot. Now in here, we're going to start it when the meeting is called. Now, I don't actually have anything here to call a meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and make one up rather quickly. This weird well looking thing will do. And I'm going to grab a button, and this button will be the voting button, and we'll make it a 0.5 interaction time, and the radius will make it 2, just so it's nice and chunky. So we should hopefully be able to hit this button in this zone. Once that's hit, we'll grab ourselves another player counter, so it teleports everyone into the map. Now, since we're going to have more than one person, we need to copy this system. So we're just going to literally copy every device here. And trigger. that should be everything. Actually, we need to then copy this here teleporter. And now, paste it 4 times. 2, or we could just do 2. We'll do 2. Yeah, we'll just do 2 for this tutorial. So in the second one, I'll change that to class 2. So when it responds here, it's in class 2. And let's drag the bot in here. There he is. I'll play the bots again. Can't do much about that. I'm going to place that there. Now everything should be connected to this trigger from before. Yep, button interact, trigger from these, and untriggered all of these. And these should, in theory, change to this one. So this should be what? So this, yeah, this triggers from device 1, which is this one. And this should reference on player spawner 2. Sweet, so just go through, check them all, make sure they're all working okay. This one, I'm going to change to class 2, and I'm going to move it slightly into the middle here. Can't make them exact because, as you've seen, they kind of bug out a wee bit. Let's get ourselves a health power up. With the health power up, we can make it so pick up on counter 1 when it feels, pick that up, both, flat increase. Put this all the way up to how much health the player has. I'm just going to put it to 200, and we're going to change this to a flat decrease so it destroys their health. Okay everyone, so I've just went ahead and finished it up because I realized the way I was doing originally did not work as intended. Instead, I've went through, fixed it all up, and it works perfectly now. So let's go through everything new and everything. Let's go ahead and start over here with the button. The button hasn't had much change to it, besides a few new additions. Now we'll get into these additions later on. However, if you want to pause it, there they all are there in all of the settings. Now these are all the teleporters. This first one here teleports the people into the room. So with your player counter, you're going to do equal or more, 1, compare and count change no, transmit player counted / remove signal only, transmit for on, compare result change for all. Functions, compare target when button is interacted, on count succeeds, trigger 2, triggered. And this is trigger 2. Now with trigger 2, you're going to put a delay. You must have a delay in this. And for me it's 0.5. Let's even try 0.2 and see if it still works fine. And make sure delayed trigger instigator choice is queued. Trigger receiving from counter 2 as we just done. Untriggered, teleporter 3, teleport. Teleporter 3 is right over here. And the only thing teleporting you is that trigger. And anyone can be teleported to that. Now the second one here is a bit later on, which we'll get to. Same with the one after it. So everyone's teleported in this room. They're now given the option to vote these people out. And you'll see there's 2 people there. I did record this, so I'm just going to pop that in right now. Now you've seen that, let's continue on. So we've copied these over, we've checked them all, make sure everything is connected correctly and copied to the new object and whatnot. Now, the timer here. The timer, at the minute of this recording, it's bugged, so you can't go into the button and find timer. You have to go into timer and do it all in here. So start when button is on interacted. On success, player counter 3, compare players to target, and pulse trigger start sequence. So this is the pulse seeker, trigger even. Did it say? No, it didn't say it was trigger. Okay, that's fine. And as we've done already, it is going to trigger 8 times, and because it bounces back and forth, it does it 16 times. Now this is player counter 3. Same settings as before, you can pause it if you want to check. Compare players when, timer on success. This is the timer, again it's just bugged at the minute. And then it triggers trigger 3 on count succeeds. Trigger 3, roughly same settings. We're going to change that back to 0.2 to see if it works. Trigger on counter 3 succeeded. And teleport on teleporter. That is this teleporter up here. So if you don't vote for anyone, you just stand here AFK or whatever, that's okay, because when the timer is done, it'll teleport everyone up here anyway. Awesome. I did change some settings in this as well, so we'll just bring them up. You can pause it there and write those settings down. So again, once this timer's done, this pulse trigger activates, which has the triggers for each of these people. So here's the settings of the triggers. They are both the exact same here. Trigger 1. Reset times triggered on button. Make sure you do this so it doesn't break once there's a second meeting. You must reset and disable devices all over the place so it's able to redo them over and over again. So that is when the buttons interacted with, it will reset the amount of times these triggers have done this, and these triggers are almost the exact same. I will go on to the next one once we've done that. Trigger when receiving from mutator device 2 on player entering, and when the timer is set on urgency mode. Now this is a different timer, don't get mixed up with this. We can't change the name of it, so it's super awkward on this tutorial, but this is timer 2. On triggered, teleporter 2 is enabled, the pulse trigger will stop, which is this bad boy here. Mutator zone device 3 is enabled, and the timer is started. Now this is the second timer. That second timer is that one too, which is this one, which is set to 2 seconds. And it will reset. Make sure you set all your timers to reset and not stop, otherwise you won't be able to do it again. Scroll on down, and we have urgency mode set on on. Now I've got 2 seconds in this, urgency mode is set to 1 second. Start when receiving from trigger or trigger 4, which is on triggered. This is trigger and trigger 4, so when one of these is done, it stops this and starts this timer. On urgency mode, when it's started, the triggers here, all the triggers in this area will be triggered once more. So if there's another trigger, which is close to being triggered, then it'll be like, oh, there was another tie, so we're going to trigger it too. And then on success, player counter, compare player targets. So what this does basically is, this one will not activate again, so the person will not be voted twice, because it's reset back to 1 time out of 16. However, this one is on 15 out of 16. When this hits urgency mode, this turns into 16 out of 16, then triggering the trigger, which goes ahead and enables the second teleporter, which is class 2 and not class 1. You can pause all the settings here on the screen. On teleporter device 3, which is the same as this one. On teleporter device 3, disable. So we disable the teleporter 3, we'll get to what that is. So the counter here, which we were talking about earlier, will activate or compare the players once timer 2 has succeeded. On count succeeds, HUD message show, and player counter 4 compares players. On count fails, however, is HUD message device, player counter 4, and health power up, which we done out there on that previous one. We've then got these here. I can't believe they made these like invisible now, or no collision on them. Bit silly, but oh well. We've got these HUD messages, so this is going to tell us if it's a draw or who's been voted out. So this one is who's been voted out, and I've put instigator name was voted out. Instigator name is a bit of code here. It's very simple. Whoever's in the box, it will show their name. So it could be like Joe Mama was voted out, because that's the player's name. And you can see all the settings I changed there. However, this is very customizable to your choosing, so you can choose a bunch of these settings yourself. Show when receiving from player counter fails. That's because this is set to out of 2, equal or more of 2. So if there's 1 or less, it's going to be like, uh-oh, there's not enough players. That's a fail, which then shows the person getting voted out and they die. However, if it succeeds, 2 or more players are in here. Draw. None were voted out. Settings are the same here. Show when receiving from it being succeeded, the player counter. And then we were talking about once this is done, it then has the player counter 4, which is yet again another one over here. Player counter 4 triggered trigger 5, and the settings here you can kind of see it are all the same. Compare when receiving from player counter succeeds and fails, because it's going to be doing both. And then trigger 5, same settings here, we'll do 0.2, Q, player counter 4 on succeeds, teleporter 5 teleport, and that is the teleporter up here, thus teleporting everyone out of the area. And then the whole sequence continues. You can set a delay on this before it starts and all. However, we did do that before in a different tutorial, so we're not going to go over that today. You can also add signs, a thing that pops up going meeting called and all that there jazz. That's all up to you. This is just the mechanics. So let's go ahead and start the game and we'll show you how it works. So I got the little bot here. Yeah, I'm somewhat the imposter. Interact. Hurry, vote now. So I'm going to go ahead and vote for Mr. Anonymous here. Now he's got +2 there, which is interesting, and I got +2 as well. Going to put into that. This is going through. It says, oh no, I've been triggered, but because it was a draw, none of us were voted out, so we're both teleported up there, and that would teleport everyone up there. Just make sure player collision is set to off, and that is in my island settings somewhere. So we can interact again, and this all resets. We're going to go ahead and just vote for me on this round. So now I've got some votes here. I can see those are reset in the new one. And I'll be teleported in. And Mobile Scrap was voted out because nobody else was in this area. And of course you'd have it set to 1 life only. And then the other player, or everyone else that's alive, should be up here. Voila, they are. Now done. Haha! No one else can call a meeting. Awesome. Anyway, everyone, there's the tutorial for the new voting system with event binding. If this tutorial helped out, please check out that subscribe button below the video. It means a lot and helps the channel grow insanely awesome over the years. Thank you so much for over 2,000 subscribers as well and all that jazz. But I will see you all in the next one, everyone. Tell me in the comments below what other tutorials you would like me to see or even redo with the event binding. But I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. 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 Oh, I broke it.